Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the panel show, which interesting panel show because I think everyone is experiencing different weather. It's Maca this week. There was the East Coast snowstorm. I've got 85-degree weather in the Panhandle of Texas, and yesterday it was 62. So, yeah, wacky weather. What are you guys experiencing there, Glenn? How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Gordon. Yeah, it's a little colder. It was feeling like -2 in the evening 2 days ago, which wasn't the nicest. But it's like it was okay today. Kind of 30s ish. We're getting a bit of snow, I think, later this week, but it's going to be 60 something on Friday, which for us, Gordo, is like 90 this time of year.
Yeah, I know. I'm loving it. I'm still got the Midwest usage on me. So I was told that I only get one winter where I feel superior from everyone else, and then I become a soft Southerner. So I'm enjoying it while it lasts. Jamie, how about you guys? How are you?
We are, was it 60, 65, 70 today? It's getting actually, sorry, I'm looking at the weather right now. It was about 80, it's close to 80 today. And later in the week, it's getting to close to 90. Making up for the wet weather that we had over the past couple of weeks.
Oh man, send some of that our way. It's dry out here. We had a couple of
pretty wild, right? Dumping over on the East Coast, like Tahoe and kind of Northern California got dumped on those snow.
I saw that.
Yeah,
like 40 inches or so in a couple of days.
But, I think they had 10 feet in 4 days in Tahoe, which is pretty ridiculous.
That's insane.
Anyway, no one's here to listen to us talk about the weather, are they?
No, although it'd be just as fun, I think. But it is heating up, so let's go ahead and it is heating up in the table as we were just talking about. Oh no. So it's not showing everything there. Let's see if we can. Oh no, that's not good enough. Oh well. All right, so that first one is just talking about match day 27 overall. We'll talk about is Tottenham is Arsenal slipping. Obviously, they had that pretty convincing win at the weekend against Spurs, and no better place for them to do that than against their rivals. The table is shaping up right now. New stadium curse is something that I want to talk about because I saw an article, and it's interesting because I think as fans of this sport, there is a sense of extreme superstition, right? Where in almost all facets of the game we have superstitions, and so new stadium curse will look at some of the stats from Everton's season, and then we'll look ahead at match day 28, and then of course get into Tonali's picks. So I kicked this all out, huh? There we go. All right, so these were the fixtures from the weekend and the results there. We did not pod the panel show last week, so I figured I'd also include the tie to Brentford on the 12th of February, and then Arsenal's tie to Wolves on the 18th of February, which kind of set up this cataclysmic storm of media frenzy. So we'll start there. Jamie, how do you feel about, I know we were talking about it before the show started, how are you feeling about Arsenal's chances this year?
You'd rather have the points still, right? But it's gone from theirs to lose to suddenly, are they losing it? Even if City win their game in hand, they're 2 points clear, so it's still advantage Arsenal. But what's really exciting is that they have to play each other, right? So if they lose that game to City, then suddenly they are no longer top. It seems like they've been top forever. I think this is going to really, really test Arteta, who always looks nervous on this side of the pitch, right? And I think that sometimes translates to the fans, to players, when things get testy. I think it would have been really, really interesting had Tottenham not conceded immediately into the second half, and or Moani's second equaliser not been ruled out for offside or foul. I forget. Either way, ultimately Spurs are a bad side. It's quite an easy team to play against. New manager. Did they get the new manager bounce? Not really. But it's hard to say against a team so superior to them in Arsenal, who don't have the level of injuries that Tottenham have. I think we'll see how they do against Chelsea. If they show up, they should beat us. And which point maybe the prior draws were just a blip on the map. But I think we're going to be up for it. So they need to beat Chelsea in order to stop this media kind of onslaught and get back to business. Just to see who shows up.
Yeah, and we'll get back to Chelsea because I've got questions for you about their blip in form recently. But Glenn, over to you about Arsenal. Staying on that topic, before you jumped on, we were talking, and at one point they were 9 points clear, and I wouldn't say we had turned the corner yet, but we're pretty deep in the season. Being 9 points clear, it's a pretty commanding lead at the top. Do you feel like that Arsenal lead is slipping, or do you think it was just we're at the end of February, a long cold winter has just ended, a lot of fixtures mount up? Do you think it was a little bit of that, or do you think there's more to it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, they're fighting on all fronts, right, aren't they, as well? So they're kind of, they're knee-deep in all of these competitions right now, Gordo. So you are going to see a more stretched squad, but I still think Arsenal have one of the best in-depth squads in the league. Eze coming on, starting a game, getting a brace against Spurs really underlined how I think if they are to win the league, him and Gyökeres are going to have a really pronounced role, I think, as we kind of come into the run-in. I think they are going to be two key players who have been slightly overlooked for various reasons. But, I mean, the Brentford draw, from an Arsenal perspective, I think that is fine because both teams came into that game as the most informed teams in the division, right? It was 1 versus 2 in the form table. And if you're away from home and you're going to the most informed team, who is even better at home than they are away from home, then, a draw is a fair result. And I think we could have won that, right? On a different day, Thiago gets on the score sheet, on a different day, they get a winner, right? Kelleher made that amazing save at the death from Martinelli. So that was just a good game of football. That was just a really high quality game of football between two teams who were really, really going for it. The Wolves game, right, Gordo, that's where you're just like Chelsea, Burnley, that's where you're setting points on fire. That's where Rosenior, Tessa, if you're the manager, you go into the changing room. After that game finishes, you're beating Wolves 2-0. You're 1-0 up against Burnley. These are the games if you want top 4, if you want to win a league, if you want any momentum and serious success in the division, you have to be putting those games away. Those are two monumentally poor teams. Both of them are exceptionally bad. And to let those kind of teams who have no confidence, whose managers are on the rope, certainly Burnley's, Scott Parker's been walking the line of being fired, I think, the last few weeks. Obviously, Rob Edwards has actually done a pretty solid job, despite the table not really saying that. But to let teams like that back in when you're competing at the top, it's one thing for Brentford to do that if we're mid-table or whatever, but that was the alarm bells ringing. The manner in which they did it, right, Gordo? It was such a shambolic final equalizer to concede, right? And then, as Jamie said, it's true. It's again, classic Dr. Spurs, whatever else. I watched the game. I really enjoyed the game. It was a good game of football, despite the scoreline being obviously very skewed. It was an enjoyable game of football. But yeah, Spurs are just a really, really weak side. And right, honestly, you're not a million miles away, right, Gordo, with the table as it is. You're not categorizing Spurs alongside Wolves and Burnley, but you're starting to categorize them alongside Notts Forest and whoever else is down there, right? You've got a couple. West Ham is who I was thinking of, right? That is the echelon of teams you are starting to categorize Spurs in their league form alongside, which is A, painful for Spurs, and B, if you're top of the table and you're playing a team who's actually fighting against relegation, winning 4-1 isn't out of the ordinary, right? That's a pretty standard result. So what can we extrapolate from that game? I am not too sure. As you said, they got a new manager. He clearly had no time to implement anything. I stand by the fact that Spurs have an abysmal squad. I think they have a really lower mid-table squad. I appreciate there's injuries, but the 11 players that they're putting out each week in the Premier League, I think that is a bottom 6 squad. I really, really, really do. So I guess my point is, what have we learned from Arsenal? Well, they got a fair point against us. They torpedoed themselves at Wolves. That was the alarm bell. And then they've readjusted the ship, and it helps Gordo, right, that they won 4-1. They didn't win 1-0. They sneak a penalty in the last minute. They demolished their North London derby rivals, and that game always has extra significance. It's not like them beating West Ham 4-1 or Burnley 4-1. They're beating Tottenham 4-1, right? Yep. And the kind of emotional bounce that can give you as a team, that's huge. Now, I think what's going to be really exciting to see is Can Man City keep putting the pressure on them by picking up very, very helpful wins? And, you know, every Arsenal game, it's not the point gap. It's not a 9-point gap, as you said, right? It's completely changed. City are breathing down their necks. We know City can chase teams. We know it. This isn't the squad that's done that before. It's the same manager, but it's not the same squad. So I'm curious to see the competitiveness of this City team right up until May. But it's interesting. From a neutral perspective, it's really hard. I've said this on the show before. I don't want Arsenal to win the title. I don't want City to win the title. And with respect to me, I don't want Chelsea to win the title either. I'm not really left with a huge amount of teams. Like Liverpool is probably one I would just like to see win the title because I quite like Liverpool as a club. But I think we're in for a really good run. And from a kind of neutral, Brentford bias aside, a neutral perspective, it's good for the league. It's good for the game. It's so boring if Arsenal are 9 points ahead in March. It ruins the league, right? It just ruins it. So I am cheering City picking up points to keep it competitive, but like, do I want to see them win the league again? I don't think so.
Yeah, and it is the less, like, which is the lesser of two evils that you want to win, right? Because there's that overhanging. I mean, it's gone away now, but it was pretty mainstream. It was all over everybody's lips 2 years ago. Still haven't heard anything on it, but you know, there is that 115 charges, which is now, you know, it's actually what is 130, but you know, 15 of them are wrapped up inside other charges. So, and so you've got one team that's pretty capable. We've seen them do this. The second half of the season for Man City is usually where they pick up steam. Now, as you pointed out, it isn't the same team that's done that, but they've consistently been able to. And sometimes you have to look at, it could be the way that they are managed or coached in trainings, and it's just they hit that peak right at this time, and everyone comes into ultimate fitness at this time and carries them through the season. So it will be interesting to see. They've definitely got a lot of fitter players that and younger players that can probably handle the load. Also, Pep has shown time and time again that he is very comfortable being the chaser instead of the chasee, and so it's one of those where it's going to be, we'll collect the points, over to you, Arsenal, kind of thing for the next couple of weeks. And as long as it stays that way, you know, and they can keep close, and maybe the lead changes one or two times, you know, that it benefits everybody, because it was starting to get, you know, when City were dropping points, it was starting to look boring. It was like, why even watch? It looks like this is done and dusted. It looked like the relegation scrap was done and dusted. I mean, 5 weeks ago, it looked like that was pretty much a guarantee. And now we're right back in the thick of it, which is why we love this sport. Speaking of inconsistencies, we'll go back to Chelsea because I didn't want to talk to them. So after a pretty phenomenal January, I think you guys only lost to Fulham in January. Oh no, there was a semifinal.
Yeah, we lost to Arsenal.
To the Arsenal, and then February's been interesting. You know, we dropped points at home to Burnley, a good FA Cup fourth round, but it was Hull City. Dropped points to Leeds, unfortunately. Beat Wolves, which, you know, it's not for everybody in the league apparently, and then losing that second leg of the semifinals against Arsenal. So it's been a pretty decent January, a rough February. What are you looking at, and why do you feel that the tables kind of turned this month?
I think we're just still young. We're not taking our chances. I think that a little bit of the Club World Cup catching up with us in terms of fitness. Like, you've seen us pick up niggling injuries. Personally, I haven't heard this said too much, but like, I think we really miss Cucurella, and whenever he's not on the pitch, we concede goals, and we're not as good as going forward, and we concede goals, and that's been fairly consistent. I think we play Gusto at left back, and I think he's a better option than Hato, who's a great footballer. I think we concede a lot of goals when he plays left back. We should be picking up. We were 2-0 up against Leeds. I think all the criticism that you throw at Arsenal for dropping points, throw it right at us. We should have won that game comfortably. Absolute madness that we didn't. And then Palmer missed a goal that was or a chance that was far easier to score than miss, especially if someone of his caliber. And then against Burnley, we ran out of steam a little bit. We still out XG'd them to 2 to 0.85. So, we should have won. We had more possession, similar amount of chances, but then we just switched off. We brought on all of the centre-backs that you could possibly imagine and then conceded from a corner. So that was smart. I think we were about to go out, and I was like, and my wife was ready to leave. I was like, let me just watch this. Let me watch this, and it scored. Like, fucking bullshit. Turned it off and just like walked away. It's like, what if you win? Like, we're not going to win.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like we very nearly lost. But
can you imagine if you'd listened, Jamie? What if you win? You turn it back on. You concede.
Yeah. So
I've been there before.
Honestly, we show up better when we play better teams. We've always found it difficult, a little less so under Rossini, but fairly difficult to break down teams that just sit in a low block. Arsenal won't do that. We'll dominate possession. We'll probably play more on the counter. I hope we keep 11 men on the field. We will probably lose if we do not do that. We had obviously Fofana sent off this past week, so we won't be playing our best centre-back pairing. That's a concern when you're playing Arsenal. But I think we'll see. We need to bolster the midfield, Santos and Caicedo in the pivots, and then it's going to be up to Palmer, Pedro, and either Neto or Esteval to try and figure out a way to beat Arsenal. I think they are beatable. I mean, that you can clearly score against them, and if they go behind, then potentially we can rattle them and get something from the game. We don't need to win the game; they do. We obviously want to win the game, and we probably do need to win the game. But like, they definitely need to win the game. So it's going to be an interesting one, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it isn't just the context of the final score. It is those microcosms within the game, and Chelsea score early, and that'll put a lot of doubt in the minds of the supporters, and obviously they can feel that in the field. And as you pointed out earlier, Arteta is just a naturally twitchy human being, and can definitely let his emotions come out, and he wears them on his sleeve, and it'll just make for really cinematic sport. I'm hoping it's not just a classic sludge fest in the midfield and not a lot of chances, but we'll get to that when we get to the fixtures. But I wanted to talk about the table that we're currently seeing. This is top half of the table. I felt teams that might still have a chance or a shout into getting themselves in the talk for the top four. You could see a couple of inconsistencies with some of the teams at the top. Obviously, Villa seems like they've kind of got their feet back under them after a rough January. Liverpool, again, hot and cold. I want to talk a little bit more about Mo Salah, but Glenn, when you look at this top half, I mean, what stands out the most to you?
Yeah, that we're there, I guess. Gordon, all right, that's pretty cool, isn't it? That we're in 7th place. It makes the Brighton result this weekend all the more disappointing, because had we got a win, which most people would have predicted us to at home against a dreadfully out of sorts Brighton team, then we're 2 points behind you guys, right? And we're 2 points behind Jamie as well. That would have been really cool. You can't win them all, and credit to Brighton, they turned up and they played better than us, and we didn't deserve anything from the game. Just the performance was a little bit disappointing, because when you put yourself in these conversations, right, when you get stuck into it, right, you just need to try and have some consistency, right? That's how Chelsea, United. Look at that under Carrick, right? That is just so many wins. That is just like suddenly Man United, who have been a bit of a basket case this year, and now season a 4th, right? And that's probably as much credit to Carrick as it is a discredit to Amorim, who was clearly just a horrendous, more tactical fit. He was just a disaster. But nonetheless, you see what happens, right, Gordo, when you string together 3 points. They didn't lose, right? They drew. They didn't lose. Points on the board. Suddenly, they're right behind Villa. So, yeah, it's great that we're there. Obviously, it was good to get the draw against Arsenal. We picked up some great wins before that. But every game's big for us, I think, at the minute. I think every game, if we want to stay in the race, not for top 4, but for Europe of some form, whether that's Europa or probably more realistically, the kind of Conference League, you've got to keep winning. I'm surprised Bournemouth have strung together. They seem very hot and cold this season, but they've put together a really big unbeaten run. I watched the West Ham game, which was more entertaining than the scoreline would suggest. It was actually quite a decent game. It was actually a good watch, and Yeah, so I'm not too concerned about Bournemouth behind us, but you see a 5-point gap to you guys. You've got a great run of fixtures coming up, right, Gordo? You've got a slate of fixtures that you guys should be winning, each and every one of them. So easier said than done.
Yes,
But
yeah.
I can see a world in which obviously the top 6 starts to pull away, right? And maybe we're kind of fighting for 7th, 8th with Bournemouth and a few teams below us. But yeah, the fact you mentioned kind of top 4 in Europe and we're still in that screenshot is really, really impressive in the context of our season with all the players and managers and staff that we lost. For us to be possibly having our best ever season in the Premier League in 5 years under a new manager, playing good football is really, really like fundamentally impressive. So yeah, I'm buzzing. We're 7th. This weekend was a blip. I just think move on, try and beat Burnley at the weekend and get right back into a good run of form.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, I mean, kind of a double whammy with the Liverpool very, very late goal. I want to talk about
another
that too,
very late goal.
Yes, yeah. So that they get the 3 points there. If you guys went into Brighton and played them the way that the table showed, I mean, you guys would have been in 6th if had Liverpool not grabbed that. So it's kind of there's a few things this weekend that kind of went against you guys. I included Bournemouth. I'm glad you brought them up because it is, to me, it's incredible. And I'm assuming it is down to the manager. I think they've got a great manager there. I think they've got plenty to build on. But this is a team that they're starting back 4.
Everyone.
+1 has gone to another club from last year. How a back line, as you guys are well aware, a back line in the Premier League is essential to any climb up the table, to basically staying in the Premier League.
And their goalkeeper, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. So the fact that they're in the top 10 to me is baffling. And I don't remember a team that has shocked me as much as Bournemouth. Really, when they get dismantled, I'm thinking, I don't even think Semenyo could help them. It's tough to lose a back line, especially when your bench already isn't that deep. And then they've lost their starting lineup, and then Semenyo goes, and they've still managed to get results. It's scrappy, but they are holding out at 8th, deep in the season.
Your theory on Semenyo, right?
Yeah. So I
think it proves how good Areola is.
For manager, sure,
right? Like he should get snapped up by someone. I would be shocked if Spurs don't go after him incredibly hard. But why would you want to go there when things are going fine here? That's Spurs is a dumpster fire.
And they've got this conveyor belt of talent, right? James Hill, centre back, been one of the best players in the league in February, right? Long throw, beast at the back. Then they get players like the winger, the new winger that's appeared out of nowhere. That decides to run the length of the pitch, literally the length of the pitch, and hit the post against West Ham. They just have this Brighton Brentford-esque conveyor belt where they had a similar dismantling, as you said, Gordo, to us, right? Backline gone, keeper gone. Despite that, they've got a great attitude at the club. I really thought when Semenyo moved to City, I was looking down for Bournemouth. I was looking, are they going to get swallowed into a West Ham, Nottingham Forest dogfight? How are they 8th? How on earth are they 8th? Like, it's just, they get players like Krupi Jr., right? He is a really, really high-quality young forward. Like, they just have a real way with management, with fans, with recruitment, that if there's maybe a trio of clubs in the league that are run really well, it's Bournemouth, Brentford, and Brighton, because we can just keep doing it.
And I think it's when you have that conveyor belt and you have a manager that's willing to insert those younger players from the academy straight into it and let them play into a system that's already established. And I think that was the biggest thing that has been Manchester United's biggest flaw, in my opinion, in the last, 8 seasons or so, there wasn't an identity. And when the players go out, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you don't have a system, and you don't have an identity, it's really hard to play. It's hard to know what your responsibilities are. And I think that is what Areola has established at Bournemouth, is he can plug and play anybody he wants because the system, everyone has bought in and believed in this system. And I think that's something that you don't see. And basically to transition straight into that, Arne Slot, he's got a system, I think everyone knows what that system is. It's play Gakpo at all 11 positions. It doesn't matter his form or anything. But what do you, in your guys' opinion, because I have plenty, obviously being a Liverpool fan, but in your guys' opinions, what has been the biggest difference between last season and this season? Has it been the rest of the league underperforming and we kind of get a new manager bounce that we just rode on? Or is it something totally unrelated to anything that had to do with Arne coming in? This was always going to happen. Jamie, I'll throw it over to you. Sorry.
I think it's potentially a mixture of both. I think he got very fortunate and was probably smart not to bring anyone in last year. And he basically did his best impression of Roberto Di Matteo. Just why fix if it's not broken? And then the further you move away from Klopp's team, you bring in your own players, you suddenly have got to bring in your own identity, and that's where he struggled. I think that was necessary, though, given the age of the squad. I think you probably could have handled that better with the kind of contract. I mean, it's not really his role, but the sporting directors with the aging contracts on Van Dijk, on Salah, on Trent, requiring you to bring in new resources. Bringing in a lot of resources that would all start in the first team is difficult to integrate, especially if you didn't actually ever integrate your own identity. You're not integrating them together. You're establishing a new identity, so it's a new team for everyone. And you've got new people to bring into the culture that you've never assimilated into anyway. That's, I think, the linchpin there. So, like, had he just coasted on his laurels again and it was the same team and they were maybe 2 years younger than they were or they are, maybe he would have been fine and he wouldn't have got found out. But I actually think this is probably a blessing in disguise this season for him. Like, you're forced to make decisions with personnel, with tactics, and really build an identity. Like, it's like you can't exist forever on a legacy identity, especially as those players leave. You have to build a new one, and a refresh is healthy after a while, and you're being forced to do it. It might feel painful now, but as long as you don't lose too much ground and you can still either Champions League or Europa League, and then next year really come back strong when you have Isak firing all cylinders and everyone bought in, perhaps, assuming he's still there, I think it could be a momentary blip for Liverpool. But yeah, without repeating myself too much, I think it's because he never instilled his own culture, and bringing in new players, it was just a bridge too far.
Yeah, and it would have been unfathomable last year to have all three contracts run out and you lose Trent, Verge, and Mo in the same offseason for nothing, obviously. In hindsight, that looks like it would have been a great excuse to hide behind that and actually be forced to go out and pay whatever Crystal Palace wanted for Guehi in the summer and grab him and basically say, well, we lost our spine. This is a rebuild season, and everyone to be comfortable with that. But I really think that heads would have rolled had, we saw the back of Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, and Alexander-Arnold in the same offseason. I think it'd be unfathomable. But again, hindsight is 2020. Glenn,
that Isak drama didn't help.
Yes,
at the beginning of the season, like bringing a guy who's completely out of fitness and have that drama surround the team, like you could have done without that.
Yeah, like it or love it, and I had my opinions. It wasn't a signing that I felt fit us anyways, and then the price tag shot, and that was even before the price tag. Then the price tag shot up, and I didn't want it, and then all the drama started, and I didn't want that either. And it is what it is. But when you contrast that to Guehi, and I think we've talked about this on a couple of podcasts ago, but I think it sent the wrong message, not just from our club, but globally. You watch two sagas play out. You've got somebody who handles himself very professionally. Club captain of Palace, goes out there, plays very open about it. I'm a Palace player. I'm going to be a Palace player until they tell me otherwise. And then you've got somebody who basically pouts and doesn't train. And that wasn't all Isak, of course. And Newcastle had a lot to do with that in terms of the media frenzy. But you get one guy that basically pouts and throws the rattle out of baby carriage, and he gets his way, and the other guy does not. And I mean, it works out better for him now because he's at City. So I mean, when you're looking at it, it actually might have been a smart move from Gahey. But Glenn, did you think? There's obviously, this is completely split the Liverpool fan base, but if they don't make top four and they don't have a trophy, does Arne Slot walk at the end of the year?
No, he wouldn't. No, I don't think so. I think that's short term. I mean, he delivered you guys the Premier League trophy, and I think it's all kind of revisionist to say, oh, it was Klopp's XYZ. It's like he was the manager. You know what I mean? If he had led you guys to 12th place, you wouldn't have been saying, oh, this is Klopp's team. You would have said this is Slot's team, right? You just cannot have it both ways. And I appreciate this season has been a massive disappointment for a lot of different reasons, right? And I think there's been a culmination of factors: the Isak gate, the drama there, Mo Salah's unprecedented drop-off from the player of the season, right? I mean, obviously Haaland's running him close, but the most just bulletproof Premier League player, right? He scores, he assists if he's on the pitch, right? He is unplayable. To genuinely a player who looks an absolute shadow of himself for club and country, right? He did not set the world on fire for Egypt at AFCON. He was fine. He was just fine. He's gone from a regular kind of 8 to 9 out of 10 player to basically put it in 6s and 7s each week. It's like, that's going to throw you off. But again, it really is just, we've talked about it before, right, Gordon, or here. It's just recruitment was just, again, hindsight's helpful here, but it was just so warped. It makes less and less sense to get Isak when you see the quality of Ekitike, right? It makes zero sense to have them both in your team, because how are you going to play them together every week? Ekitike is a baller. We all like Ekitike. He's a serious player. Now, if he starts converting his XG to goals, which he has dismally failed at for the last 6-7 weeks, if he starts converting his chances, like his chance against City, I think it was, right? He is a player who I think will light it. He is the future of the club, right? Florian Wirtz is playing. I know he got the knock now, the last game. He is growing into his role, right? Nobody's ever doubting his quality. He's a world-class player. He just got thrown in, as Jamie really eloquently said, to a team that was trying to change identity and personnel simultaneously. And that's really challenging in a brand new league, right? That's hard enough for a player like Isak, who's come over from Newcastle, who's used to scoring goals in this league. It's like nigh on impossible for a wonder kid, nonetheless, from Germany to come over here and start trying to ball the way he did in the Bundesliga. It's just a different league, right? Doesn't make him any worse. It just means he's got to adjust. So I think there's been a culmination of factors in terms of the old guard dropping off, right? The players you bought just is going to be slow to integrate. You've got Slot finding his vision for the team. But ultimately, as you said in the comment, and we've all been saying all season on the show, it's just like you missed. There were just like massive holes in your recruitment strategy. It's like a disgrace that you didn't get Gahey. It is laughable that Man City came in and swallowed up Gahey and Semenyo, two of the best and best behaved players, right? Semenyo was scoring goals for Bournemouth literally until he was put into a car and driven up to Manchester, right? They were basically pulling him away.
Game winner in his final game,
last kick for the club, right? That and Gahey's attitude is just, it embodies everything you want from a new signing. Whereas Johan Visser for Newcastle, which hasn't been a particularly productive union so far, and obviously Isak, who's been very unfortunate with injuries, but had he trained properly for pre-season, then who knows how his fitness would look, right? I think there's been a nightmare arrangement of factors. Now, what I do appreciate, Gordo, from the kind of slot out people is like, you guys are not playing well, right? I appreciate that you guys are just like not playing very good football. You're scraping a lot of late goals. You're kind of just, okay, there you go. I mean, Benjamin, you put it in there as I've come to it, right? Exactly. Like, I do appreciate as a Liverpool fan, you have a certain expectation of how a team's going to play football. But ultimately, you guys had Jurgen Klopp, who fundamentally plays some of the most attractive, dynamic football in the league, right? Not every manager can be Klopp, and nor should they try and be, right? Arne Slot's different. As Jamie said, we haven't really figured out. He hasn't figured out what his style is under Liverpool. And right now, I think, Gordo, you have this awkward transition phase where everything's kind of up in the air. Salah needs to just be cleared out because he's clearly nowhere near the player he was. Like, his drop-off, as I said, has been astronomical. It has been him and Van Dijk. Their drop-off has been crazy. So I think you guys need to give Slot time. You need to think of this season as just an adjustment season. You need to buy a world-class centre-back in the summer. And I think Klopp should. I think Slot should get another season because he won you guys the league. And I think it's kind of having your cake and eating it to take the league title and then say shove him out 6 months later. But I do appreciate for Liverpool fans watching that if the style of football is as dire as fans tell me it is, then you do get frustrated. So I do see both sides, but I think Slot deserves a season in charge. Who knows? You might win something this year. No, we don't know what you're going to do this year. I think he deserves a full post-reconstruction season. And if that turns out to be really poor, Gordo, if you guys are playing terrible football come December, then maybe it's not meant to be. But I think it's a little harsh to boot out a guy who won the league for you guys. I think that's a little harsh.
Yeah, I agree. It's been hard to be, I wouldn't say pro Slot, but anti Slot out. It's got incredibly hard over the winter period. But my thought was always the worst thing that he could have done was won the league last year, because it set this impossible standard that was never going to happen. We lose Jurgen Klopp, this charismatic figure that played very, as you said, very attractive football. And we all just assumed that last year was going to be a struggle, and it wasn't. And then we assumed that, look at all these signings. That was the greatest in the 35 years that I've been a Liverpool fan. That was the single greatest summer that we've ever had in terms of, obviously we didn't get Gahey, and you'd look at that as a big failure. But in terms of the amount of money we spent, and we got players, normally with Liverpool, the amount of times that I've seen, like, who is this guy? And then, there's this, 15-minute YouTube clip about how great he is in the French league. And you're sitting there like, okay, I could do that for my grandmother. I can create the world's best clip and she could look like the best winger. And then, of course, they integrate, and Klopp, uses them, and they become household names like Andy Robertson or something like that. But this was the first season. It's like, whoa, we went out almost the day that the transfer season opened. We got Flo, and you're thinking like, and then they just kept rolling in, and you're thinking this is it, and then it just didn't happen. I think that kind of also didn't help. But enough on that. I want to ask, but maybe because we talked about the identity and getting the ultimate buy-in. Look, I don't know if you saw the game or any of the post talk about it, Jamie, but the clip of Mo getting yanked because he really was not very good, and then kind of laughing that he's getting replaced by a 17-year-old, and then that 17-year-old comes on and has a phenomenal 20 minutes, created more chances than Gakpo and Mo Salah combined, almost gets an assist right at the end there, completely pivotal in the way the game changed in the last 20. Do you think that the form has anything to do with buy-in from the bench in the locker room from some of the senior players?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some players still have that aura, right? They've been there, they've done that, they've earned the respect that they carry, but you still have to carry yourself in a certain manner and be a leader in the dressing room. And it all starts with respect. I think you wouldn't catch anyone doing that on Man United when Roy Keane was captain. Let's be honest, right? Cole Palmer was similar actually this weekend for Chelsea, like really disappointed he was coming off, showed it on his face, was emotional. Ultimately, I think you got to buy into the team game, like managers trying to execute a strategy, and you don't want to undermine that. Ultimately, your team needs to win the game. But I think Salah, that's not the first time he's done that, right? Earlier this season, that happened quite a lot when he was either pulled or he spoke to the media when he was on the bench.
Yeah,
just trying to get his narrative out there. I think he's me first, team second. When you're scoring and assisting in the manner that he used to, I think you can be that way. But when your contributions dry up, I think it's a little more difficult. I don't think this was this wasn't unpredictable either, right? Like he's a step slower, and you need to improve other facets of your game. If speed is one of the elements of your game and you lose that, you need to almost reinvent yourself. Mm-hmm. So players like Pirlo lasted forever, like John Terry, never fast, so always read the game well. So even if he loses a step, you can fall back on that. Like Salah's just missing more opportunities than he ever used to, and I think it must be that his the loss of a step in pace is affecting him in other areas of his confidence in other areas, and that's a downward spiral.
Yeah, agree. It was even last year being, as Glenn put it, the player of the season, in my opinion.
What are you paying him?
Incredible. I think it's, what is it, 250, 300 a week or something like that.
I thought it might have been more than that. I thought it was like 4 something.
I mean, yeah, because he got the new contract. I have to look it up. But, at 32, you look at wingers or players in his position that you would argue are up there in the best wingers in any league. And 32, a lot of them are retired. And he was
like
not
Ronaldo, right? It was probably a good comp. Ronaldo obviously had a higher ceiling, better player,
definitely,
but miles better. But similar, like still thinks he can do it, but struggled and had to go to a lesser league to do that. And maybe that's what Salah is. That's the next step on his journey.
I'm sure that's probably on the cards. It doesn't look like he's a very happy character, so we'll see about that. But before we run out of time, let's talk about the other half of the table. So the relegation scrap. I included Palace in there before we started. And Jamie had rightly said, 5 points is really all they need to be in what we call safety. But there is a scrap definitely going on. It wouldn't take very long for some of these teams to get pulled in. So looking at this, Jamie, I'll stay with you. Who are you seeing that is the most surprising down there? Obviously, I think I can guess your answer, but yeah.
I disagree with Glenn. I don't think their squad's that bad, but I watching a sports bar video with Candy and O'Hara when they were talking about them needing pint players, and they've got champagne players. Their players are all very luxury, not really willing to get stuck in. They bought well, like with Conor Gallagher, but yeah, a little bit too little too late. They are a shambles, and they are, I think, Leeds. There's a bit of a gap to Brighton, but depending on the next couple of games, they could be drawn in. But certainly Leeds down are in trouble. I think Burnley, like Wolves, have started to string together some results. They're gone. Burnley are actually playing really well. They've strung together some results. I think it's too little too late for them. They're probably gone as well. West Ham are not done, and I think they're on a run of form. I think they've been actually phenomenal defensively. Like getting rid of Paqueta has probably shored up their midfield. Disasi from Chelsea has been really, really good for West Ham, and their defense has been really, really solid. A couple of clean sheets in a row. If they can maintain that defensive solidity and then build on that, sneak the odd goal, they still don't take their chances like they should. But they could easily catch Forest and or Tottenham continue to drop like a stone beneath them, as long as West Ham and or Forest continue to pick up results. And Leeds, they're not so far away that they're clear. If anyone strings together 2 wins, it's going to be absolutely like ridiculous how high they're gonna fly from like West Ham up through Leeds. It's going to be really exciting. I have no idea who's going to go down.
It's still a lot to play for. Still, I mean, they almost have to play half of the league, all of them still. So plenty of points available. Looking it up, West Ham only conceded 1 goal in February, and it was the 96th minute goal against Manchester United. So pretty impressive, especially for a team that's down there. Usually, it's tough to get momentum. Usually it's leaking goals that's the biggest problem. But Glenn, same question to you. Looking at that table, what's the biggest surprise and what are you expecting?
No, it's a great question. Had West Ham held on for the win, then Gordo, they'd be equal on points, right, with Forest. That's correct. That is how tight. That's how great, and they'd both be 2 points off Spurs. And Jamie, just on the Spurs squad, I appreciate player to player. Yes, of course, this is a hundreds of millions pounds worth of squad. I think I just don't see any team there. I guess that's part of my critique. I just think it is a almost randomly selected bunch of individuals. You just look at this 11. I think Gallagher was a great signing. I think he's classy. I like Gallagher a lot. He's my kind of player. He's just a really good player, really hardworking. But you just look at this starting 11 against Arsenal. You look at the bench. It's just bizarre. I just think it's a really bizarre collection of players that don't cohere, and I think their attitude more than anything else. Van der Ven, I don't know if you guys saw him basically ignoring the manager when he told him to push up.
Yep.
He's got a massive attitude problem. Spence has had an attitude problem with Frank before he departed, right? I mean, if you're relying on Dragerson as your starting centre back, I mean, you're in trouble because he's a really, really inconsistent centre back. But yeah, no, I do appreciate player to player. Of course, they should be they should be top 8. It just, I think their recruitment strategy as such is that there's just no form of any group accountability or collective identity. It's just a really very neoliberal group of basically random footballers who are paid an absorbent amount of money to play as individuals. That's where I think the Spurs team is really hitting a brick wall, because there's just zero accountability and zero team spirit. It's as old school as saying, do you play like a team, right? And you're seeing West Ham in February playing like a team. You're seeing Paqueta, as you said, I think, Jamie, he's moved on. He was both their best player and their biggest hindrance at times, right? He is just the epitome of a kind of luxury. He's a mercurial player. He embodies this mercurial cam. And I think they just reached the end of the road with him being a selfless player, which he obviously never was. So been very interesting to see their performances. 1 goal conceded in February is absolutely crazy. If Arsenal had that record, we'd be celebrating it. You know what I mean? Like, that is crazy. And I think that really speaks to how competitive and interesting this is going to be. Now, if Burnley beat us at the weekend, which is not by any means an impossible result, I wouldn't even be deeply surprised if that happened, because Burnley is in theory a hard place to go, especially from London, right? That's a big trip, you know. If Scott Parker can just manage to assert himself in the twilight of probably his time as manager at Burnley, if they win that, then suddenly, you know, they're not completely dead and buried. Even Wolverhampton Wanderers, right? They under Rob Edwards, they've shored up. They're not going to stay up, but they're a much more competitive team, at least for 90 minutes. Sure, they're going to lose most games, but they're a bit more competitive. I think it's really, really interesting. I think if Fulham beat Spurs at the weekend and West Ham maybe sneak a draw against you guys, and maybe Forest beat Brighton, I don't know. If Forest win and Spurs lose, and suddenly Spurs are 17th again, West Ham are a bad team to have over your shoulder for all the reasons you just illustrated. They're in form, they're fighting, they have a really, really hardcore fan base that cares about their club. They just hate the owners, and rightly so. Rightly so. Yeah. So I think it's going to be fascinating. I just really hope for the last 2-3 months of the season, if City Arsenal can stay tight and this battle to escape 18th stays like a 3-horse race, because you think Leeds are out of it, but if they were to lose 3 in a row, they're not necessarily home and dry. I'm surprised they're still there. Leeds, to me, have played some good football this season. I'm really surprised they're still stuck at 15th. But I guess in theory, it's quite a jump in quality from Leeds to Brighton and Palace, you would think, based on Premier League form the last couple of years. But 15th and under, Gordo, I think if you're in Leeds' position, you're still looking over your shoulder, because West Ham are just putting in serious performance. They're playing like a team that wants to stay in the Premier League. That's what we're seeing from West Ham. And I really admire that.
Yeah, and it makes for great cinema too, because you've got, as you said, a team over your shoulder. So every week you're looking over your shoulder at their results and kind of influencing. You know, if they play first, do they get the points? It definitely affects how teams play. So it just builds it up for the neutrals. You pointed out on something. We don't have too much time left, but I thought this was really interesting. I thought this would be a good group to bring this up on. So Everton has moved into a new stadium this year. And historically, it's always been a challenge for teams to perform in a new stadium. There's been 8 since the Premier League has started, and only one team, Derby County, has managed to improve upon their points at home in the season with the new stadium. So currently, Everton are, what does that say, 0.2?
I'd look at when they moved into the new stadium, because if you go down and then you move into a new stadium, potentially it's easier in a different division, right?
Yeah, I guess that is true.
I interrupted you. Finish your point.
No, they said, but Jamie, it says, I think it says all Premier League clubs at the time of moving grounds, right? So I think they must have stayed in the league, because that's I was thinking that too with Derby and Southampton and Middlesbrough. We'd have to go look. I'd be interested now, because you're probably right. I didn't even consider that. You're probably right.
But what do you think? Is it superstition or is there something to it? Is it just the way the fans feel because it doesn't feel like home? I mean, like, this is a very superstitious sport with superstitious fans. Does that play into it, or is that it's just stats and just naturally happens that there is only one team that's ever improved upon the previous season?
I mean, data's data, right? I think you could look at individual cases and explain away a few of them. Like Highbury was a very distinctive shape of pitch, so moving away from that takes away an advantage that Arsenal had. I think that would be expected, perhaps. West Ham's new ground is shit, so there's no surprise there. There's a lot of home support, you just can't hear them from the pitch. And Tottenham, I think, went from being Champions League team to being shit. So
should be an asterisk there with that.
Yeah, couple of asterisks. But I think it's a really interesting thing to keep in mind as more and more teams look to build new stadiums. What can we expect from those teams in the following season? I think it's a really interesting angle, especially if you're looking to make a quick buck here or there.
Yeah, and I was actually shocked because I feel like it's always something that they talk about. And when I saw these numbers, it's not terribly that far off in terms of how many points per game teams are getting from one stadium to another anyways. I thought it'd be the way that we talk about it is much more disparaging than I think the data shows. But I felt like I wanted to get your guys' opinions on it because it's one of those superstitious things that we all agree on.
Gordo, because this is the Liverpool podcast, can we just laugh at the fact that Everton have both the lowest points per game in final season at Old Stadium with 1.3.
Yeah,
and they've dropped down 0.2 more to be the lowest in points per game at first. That's quite funny that it's Everton of all the clubs. I mean,
somebody has to be the worst. They seem to volunteer. And
you've got Derby, you've got Southampton, you've got some teams that have suffered in the Premier League. And I think just on this point, COVID really affected this as well because our final season at Griffin Park as Brentford was behind closed doors. But we have shown that, again, lots of different factors. We're playing in a different league, but we have shown how if a new stadium is integrated in pretty much the same community it was located at before, if you manage to design a stadium with fans and atmosphere in mind, which the G-Tech was specifically designed to have a tight to the pitch, really kind of focus the fans, right? We've moved stadium, so we never played in the Premier League at Griffin Park, right? Which would have been brilliant. That would have been like Luton. That would have been like Luton Stadium in the Premier League, right? For a comparison. But I think we have shown how to move grounds really positively because the infrastructure was gone at Griffin Park. I miss it, but like it had reached its kind of expiration point. But you can move stadium and do it well. It's just really challenging. And Jamie's totally right to point to, if we're a case study on how to do it correctly, I think West Ham for sure is a case study on how to do it badly. And then Tottenham is a case study in you have a beautiful stadium that is just like, it looks like something, from a different galaxy and in kind of a positive way. When I see it, it looks like a stadium I want to visit. When I see the footage of it, it looks unreal. But
go ahead. Sorry.
You're right. I think there's the but that is it becoming, are these kind of very futuristic stadiums, right? Are they starting to kind of foreground almost the kind of, customer commercial experience? Are they going to be designed for NFL and big pop concerts more than can you shout abuse at the opposition's left back as close as you can? Because honestly, that is usually what gives you a bit of an edge in these games, right? That and the opposition players for sure can make a ground hostile. And you saw that with Luton. They didn't stay up. They were this close to staying up, but if they had stayed up, that home support and that home environment, Arsenal hated playing at Kenilworth Road. Arsenal would have hated to play at Griffin Park and the G-Tech. They hate it. There's a good atmosphere, right? And with West Ham, as Jamie said, that is the polar opposite. It's like playing an exhibition game in basically an NFL stadium that you don't even usually play at, right? It has that level of atmosphere. So it's a really interesting talking point. The data, as you said, Jamie, it does suggest what it suggests, but it's always, is it kind of, correlation or causation, right? There's so many factors that are in play. With Spurs, it's not the new stadium alone that is causing this drop-off in form. It's a succession of diabolical managers, poor recruitment, and just everything going wrong at once. But they still got a trophy playing at that stadium, and there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, definitely. And with the stadiums moving towards that Spurs stadium, there's, in my opinion, it goes against the locals, right? It is a stadium built for bigger events. It has a commercial aspect to it, and that's what I always felt, that the disconnect with, like, Dan Levy, where the club was going, was it was less about what was going on in the pitch and what can we do as Spurs as a brand, which I feel like is really why the foundation of United has been so rotten over the last 10 years, is because they didn't have a leader at the helm like Sir Alex Ferguson that could kind of keep the focus on the pitch, and you do your commercial stuff and we're going to keep focused, and then you lose him and you kind of lose focus to that. And it's interesting. And I think a lot of teams are going to go in that direction because it's very lucrative, right? You get a lot of extra money in the off season. You can continue to make money in the off season if you open your doors to the NFL or stadium, or concert stadium.
Yeah,
exactly. All right, we're going to wrap because we're right up against time. I don't want to keep you guys. It's late and it's school night, so we all got to get to bed. So we'll wrap up this with Tonali's picks. Jamie, I'll start with you. When you look at the fixture list, this also, by the way, which does always affect lineups, we go right into match week 30 on Tuesday, I believe. So it's Tuesday and Wednesday we play another match week in the middle. So looking at this fixture list with that in mind, what stands out to you?
I really hope Leeds don't get points at City, but there's two really. And it's West Ham against Liverpool, and it's Chelsea getting a point against Arsenal, if you'll allow me that. While I still have the microphone, I do want to make a comment on something I only just noticed. Keith Andrews, manager of the season, is a fantastic shout. Glenn, I would throw two others into that mix, potentially three. Iriola, Michael Carrick, if United qualify for Europe.
Yeah, definitely agree there.
Can you get fired and still get manager of the season? But Nuno, if West Ham stay out, could be a big one as well.
Yeah, I like all of those. I think they're really, really good shots. Yeah, Carrick is going to be a case study potentially in like in new manager bounce, right? He is going to epitomize that if they can really stay consistent, because they're just a different team under him. It's just common sense tactics.
Is it all going to Solskjaer though? Are we just seeing the second coming of all that?
I think we might be, but you can't argue with the results, right, Gordon?
Yeah,
Even if you see history repeating, these things can be simultaneous, right? You can think, maybe we're jumping the gun a little bit.
Well, if you're winning 4 out of 5 games, stick with it.
You're doing something right. On the you Jamie, as usual, I'm sure we share, I think, a very similar football philosophy. You've grabbed both my Tonalis. I really fancy Leeds for something against Man City. I honestly don't mind Wolves at home to Villa, because I think Wolves results don't speak to this, but I do think Wolves are a slightly better team than maybe the table lets on, and Villa, they're good. I just still see inconsistency in them. I really do. So I wouldn't be surprised if Wolves picked up something against Villa. I think Leeds are worth a look at against City. And yeah, as you said, Jamie, there was one more. Yeah, West Ham at Liverpool. I don't know. That's going to be a good test. I mean, that's going to be quite a good game to watch, I think, because both teams are under pressure to pick up points, and like a draw doesn't really do either of you. I mean, sure, for West Ham, that's a way better draw than it is for you guys.
Just thinking if Wirtz is going to be out for Liverpool, like you missed him this week, and
it's very obvious that nothing was going in the midfield. McAllister didn't wake up until about the 75th minute or so. He had a horrid game. One of the back passes, I almost switched the TV off. I'll tell you what I did do. I had the Liverpool game on the big TV, and I had my laptop with the USA men's hockey game. And then about the time that back pass happened into no man's land to Konate, I switched, and the US team went on the big TV. And my laptop had the Liverpool game. I was so annoyed by it. So, yeah, it's missing Florian Wirtz in the middle of the field is going to be a big one for us. And, I mean, the one thing that we've been have struggled to do. The one thing that's difficult for almost every team to do is break down a low block, and that's for sure what West Ham United are going to bring to Anfield, and they have been very good, as we've seen in February, only conceding 1 goal. So it's not a game that anyone's going to feel comfortable in, I'll tell you that much. I also had Leeds and Man City when I wrote it down. And then what you had brought up something, Glenn, about how you felt like they played better than they look on the table. So I did a little dig in the background here, and they have a league record now of the 12th league goal that they've let in from the 86th minute onward. So 12 this season. So those have resulted, obviously, those are game losing goals or game tying goals. So they're dropping massive points from the 86th minute on, which doesn't bode well when you're playing City for sure, because they will play you until the 98th minute. So
Chelsea must be high on that list of goals conceded after the 85th minute.
Yeah, let's see. If all Premier League games finished in the 85th minute, Leeds would be 9th.
Wow.
Arsenal's still top. City, Chelsea, Villa, Liverpool.
Okay.
And then Leeds in 9th. Brentford would still be 7th. So, hey, there you go. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So we will see what comes of it this week or this weekend, and then straight into the next week of fixtures. Like I said, I think it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then again on Saturday. So a lot of football coming our way. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Any final comments before I let you guys go? Jamie, anything from you?
Good luck in the upcoming fixtures.
Thank you. Glenn, how about you?
Yeah, good luck against the low block. We'll see how you manage.
I'm sweating already. But, well, I appreciate you guys for jumping on. You guys have a good night. Thanks for everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week.